Welcome to the Orange County Forum, where newsmakers keep you informed about local, national, and global issues that impact Orange County today.
Welcome to our very special anniversary event today. 25 years ago, the Orange County Forum inaugurated their first event with a discussion of the nation's banking industry. We had a gentleman named Robert H. Smith come and speak from Security Pacific. Does anybody here remember being at that event? I do. That's fantastic. Thank you for continuing your attendance at our events. Since then, we have hosted 4 presidential candidates, including Bob Dole and John McCain, 5 U.S. senators, including Dianne Feinstein, who came here 3 times, 12 members of Congress, and hundreds of legislators, public officials, and leaders in the business community. Our attendance record was broken in 1992 when we had Nobel laureate Milton Friedman come and speak. We had over 800 people attend. We have a very special program for you right now. It's a very short panel, and I want to introduce the moderator who helped put it together. Joellen Chatham is our former president. She recently retired as the Director of Public Affairs for the Southern region of the Southern California Edison Company. She is a member of the Board of Trustees and former chair of PBS SoCal. She's past president of the Forum, as I mentioned, where she also served as vice president for our Executive Leadership Series. Dr. Chatham is a member of the Leadership Council for the Center for the Study of Democracy at UC Irvine, and she's on the Board of Visitors for the Chapman University School of Law. She's been extremely helpful in this program today. Joellen, thank you so much.
Thank you. 25 years ago when the Orange County Forum was inaugurated, it had really one purpose in mind, and that is to be a catalyst for the discussion of important issues of the day and bring together opinion makers, leaders, political leaders, policy makers, and the general public to get involved in these issues, to get engaged and make a difference. There's one very important underlying assumption about this, and that is that we live in a country where we have free speech. This is a marketplace of ideas, and a marketplace of ideas assumes that with the competition of diverse ideas, the truth will come out, or at least truth will be pursued. So we have a very brief panel this afternoon. We'd like to just talk about that freedom of expression. And we have 3 people on this panel that you all know, and it is an extreme pleasure to have all 3 of them here. First, former Governor Pete Wilson, who has served at all levels of government as mayor of San Diego. The state legislature, the United States Senate, and of course, Governor of California for 2 terms. Next to him is Rich Merman. Rich is the new publisher of the Orange County Register and an entrepreneur and consultant for Fortune 500 companies, and also the president and CEO of Freedom Communications. And we all know Rich. And Ambassador Gaddy Vasquez, we all remember when Gaddy was an Orange County supervisor, worked in the office of former Governor Deukmejian, and spent a number of years as director of the United States Peace Corps, and also the United States ambassador to the United Nations Agriculture and Food Agency in Rome. So we've got local, well, all kinds of perspectives here. Governor, my first question to you. As a policymaker, literally at all levels of government, how has this marketplace of ideas and the ability of people to freely express themselves and assemble impacted your ability to be an effective policymaker?
Well, Joellen, I think it is absolutely essential. The First Amendment is not only the first, but the most important of all of the Bill of Rights amendments. It's also the most abused, but then the people that put it into the Constitution probably knew that it would be. And they were all right with that as long as we, in fact, used it wisely to truly inform people about the issues that they would be facing if they had chosen, as they did, this form of government, democracy. And those who have been some of the most celebrated heroes of democracy have also been some of its skeptics, with good reason, because they understood that it is possible for it to be abused and, even worse, ignored, so that people don't trouble to avail themselves of the information that they need to as voters. Now, here we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of a great institution. There are democracies that have been started with some optimism that have not lasted nearly that long. And in every case, it is because they weren't prepared for democracy, because as we were warned by Thomas Jefferson many years ago, democracy, to function as it should, to really be, if not a guarantor of personal freedoms, at least the opportunity for them, depends upon an informed electorate. And if you don't have an informed electorate, if you don't have one that is sufficiently informed to look at a California ballot, as challenging as those are, and to make sense of it, and if you haven't taken the trouble to listen to conflicting arguments, then you may be taken in. You may be misguided in your interpretation of an issue that has been presented by only one side. And we've had that trouble in this state with initiative measures which have been misrepresented, and with the advent of television many years ago, suddenly a tool for misrepresentation was available to those who were willing to pay for it. And we've had some bad decisions made by the public, in my judgment. But that's why it is so important. That's why this forum is to be congratulated, first on having been founded, and then it was not just a good idea, but it was admirably executed, as witness the fact that you are here celebrating a 25th anniversary. And I must say, you've certainly tested the theory, because this is my 5th appearance here. And just to cap it, it wasn't just Jefferson who had that concern. It was Ronald Reagan. You may recall one of his more celebrated statements was, remember, don't take it for granted, freedom is always just one generation away from extinction.
Well, George Washington also said this: if the freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent, we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. Ambassador Vasquez, the studies indicate that about 1/3 of the billions of people who live on this planet live in countries where there is no freedom of speech or expression, and can actually be punished for unpopular speech. You've been in many countries around the world. What have you witnessed, and what do you think freedom of speech means to us and the lack of it to some of those countries?
Well, thanks, Yolanda. First of all, I do want to join the governor in extending congratulations on 25 years. This has been a great forum. I've had the opportunity to speak here on a number of occasions, and really thank you for your continued leadership in being a town square of sorts for Orange County to be able to talk about the important issues of our time that affect this great county of ours. You know, as I was flying back to California to get to this event today, I was thinking about an event that really illustrates and I think responds to the question that you've just posed. I was traveling in the Czech Republic, and we took some time off to take a little tour, had a tour guide, and then took a lunch break. And sat with the tour guide, and we talked about how the Czech Republic had evolved from communist rule to a country that now has a form of democracy, and where the people have greater rights of expression and speech. And she says, well, the only person that doesn't like this change is my granny, the Czech tour guides. And I said, really, why is it that granny doesn't like the change? She says, well, because she believes that in the previous government that we had before, there were no drugs, there was no crime, there was no political corruption. None of those things were going on, and as soon as democracy arrived here in the Czech Republic, now we have crime, we have corruption, we have drugs, we have all sorts of problems. And I remarked, I said, well, maybe it's because the previous regime did not allow freedom of expression or speech, disclosure, transparency, accountability. And she looked at me, she says, yeah, I think you're right, I think you're right. But I think it illustrated, to the governor's point, that in areas where countries have been transformed and have become democracies, it is an interesting balance at how people who live in different generations, and we ourselves are going through a transformational change when it comes to the internet, when it comes to the kinds of communications that we will see in years to come, and we'll also fall into that great debate about freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Where do you draw the line, and what rights does the government have to interfere, to monitor, to track your conversations and your exchanges? So it becomes a very complex issue, but that illustration that I've just given you in the Czech Republic, I think underscores the challenge for some of understanding and coming into the age of expression of speech, expression of materials in print, literature, and so I think that while the world is evolving, as you've identified, there remain many, many challenges in the world, and people who hunger to have the right to even have the most basic right of the most basic levels of expression, and those are not available today.
Well, there's no question that democracy is messy, and freedom of expression probably contributes to that messiness, but it's obviously essential. Rich, you are in the business of disseminating information. Freedom of speech is one thing, but to have the freedom to disseminate it widely is something else, and that's the freedom of the press. And now today we should probably call it the freedom of media. But even when press is not controlled, how does a newspaper publisher decide what to print? Because what is printed is sometimes just as important as how it's covered. So how do you see your role as a publisher in this whole arena?
First of all, I wanted to express, as my fellow panelists have also expressed, appreciation and admiration for the celebration of the Orange County Forum's 25th anniversary. It's quite an accomplishment. I will tell you, I joined the Register, Freedom Communication, in October, and my job was to help rebuild the business and get it back on the track of where the newspaper needed to go. And I got to tell you, it is no longer a job, it is a mission. And I think it's a very important mission. There are 1,000 people who represent proud men and women who are back in the office, working as we speak on trying to get the newspaper out and the stories out on our website, what have you. And I think what they do is incredibly important. And it was important back with our forefathers when they were trying to organize the country with regard to the revolution. It was important to the civil rights leaders to get their voice out and tell people what was going on in that era. It was important here in Orange County when the Orange County Register broke the story about the illusion of safety and how there was no government agency actually monitoring convicted felons with their ankle bracelets, and a lot of policy was changed and a lot of people's lives were improved. So when we think about operating the business and procuring the news, which I think is the center of your question, we really do it in a couple different flavors. The first flavor is, at the end of the day, we're a business, and we've got to sell newspapers and media, digital and otherwise, to people who want to consume that and buy it. So a lot of what we do is focused on meeting the needs and the demands of the reader. And then the second half of that is to shine the light on issues through investigative reporting on topics that are deserving of being shined the light on. If in fact it's not us, then who would it be? So we take that responsibility very seriously, and you know, we continue to focus on those two things as we procure the news on a daily basis.
You know, freedom of speech is not completely free. There are laws regarding obscenity and pornography, incitement to riot. There are some limitations on our freedom. But George Orwell, who was a master at expression, as we all know, said that if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. Are our freedoms of expression at all endangered today, many of you? And if so, how and why?
Well, I spent a great deal of time telling the state legislature things they didn't want to hear. It worked out. After there was blood on the floor for the first 2 years, and they saw that my prediction held true, that if we didn't change, if we did not make California competitive for investment and job creation, then every year we would have these terrible budget battles and have to go through the pain of cutting things that they didn't want to cut, many of which needed cutting, actually. But in any case, they finally did get the picture. But in public life, there has to be a great deal of telling people what they don't want to hear, not just legislatures, but the people who elect them. And often they don't want to hear it. And one of the things that not only pained me but alarmed me was to discover in these sort of man on the street polls how little people knew about what their state government was spending. Not just the total number, but for what. And the misconceptions were troubling, deeply troubling. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people said, why do you want to spend so much for prisons and not enough for education? And I would then say, okay, tell me what we're spending for prisons and what we're spending for education. Not the exact numbers, but just relatively. Well, you're spending much more for prisons than for education. Great God. I even had a television newsman ask that question at a budget hearing. His fellow reporters just shook their heads. So I went over to this chart. It was a bar chart, and I said, look at the top one, the bar that goes all the way across the page. That's what we spend for education. Now look at the one on the bottom that goes about about a fifth of the way across the page. That is called corrections. The prisons are in there. You know, that's why it is so important for there to be good, full coverage, accurate coverage. You still won't get everybody to read it, but at least it's available to a great many.
So part of free speech is getting people to listen to you.
Absolutely.
And that is not always an easy thing. Gaddy, go ahead.
Well, I think that one of the elements of free speech in this country where we need to demonstrate, because you asked the question whether it is in jeopardy, one of the greatest concerns I have and one of the greatest acts of free speech that we have in this country that many Americans are not utilizing or exercising is the right to vote. And next year we will have a presidential election that will be very, very critical to the future of not only to our nation, but to the world. And so I think that one of the most basic rights that we have to express our preference, our choice, is to vote, to elect the people that we believe will represent our interests, which is also another means of expression, and to hold those who are in public office accountable for their actions and their representation, whether it's at the federal, state, or local level. And so I think that we should not lose sight, because I've always said that the ballot box is the equalizer in American society.
Well, and right now, there are polling places, more than 2,000 of them in Orange County, and there are places to register to vote. There are debates going on both sides of the political spectrum. People should be watching them. Let me pause at one last question, and then we'll close out our time. We've got to a point in our society where I think we all agree that certain things should not be in the public domain, such as pornography and so on, and people's right to privacy needs to be respected. But now we're getting into an area of offensive speech. I don't say something because it might offend someone else. Is that where we're going to? Is that a curtailment on our speech? Is that something that we should be worried about?
It should not be things that are politically incorrect, you mean? Like speech codes on college campuses, and the fact that speakers who've been invited get disinvited. Well, look, that is part of the First Amendment right to speak and to be heard or to choose not to be. The best cure for the abuse of free speech by people who abuse it by being dishonest, manipulative, or simply offensive is for the people who know better or think they do to respond and demand that they answer questions, that they be accountable. If all the facts are on the table, we're inclined in this country to think that the juries make reasonably good decisions and that the voters make reasonably good decisions. Sometimes they err, but that's often in the eye of the loser.
Rich, would you like to close this out for us? You have a comment.
Yeah, I think that I'd like to broaden out your question, and that is in today's day and age, with the technology that's available, anybody can be posting or saying anything, and there can be followers to that group. Yeah. And I think what that does is that opens up, as the governor has said, for people to get misinformed about things. And I think one of the responsibilities that the media has is to tell the story in a very thoughtful, measured, researched way. And the challenge for us in this business is to break through the clutter of that. And I think one of the challenges that we have to free speech is that it's cluttered by everybody's voice. And we need to figure out a way, we in the industry need to figure out a way to break through that and create a business model that allows quality journalism to come out in a way that goes back to influencing the way people correctly think about the world.
Well, I think this conversation could go on for a long time, but we don't have time. I would like to thank all three of you for being so articulate, thoughtful, and especially for being here today to support the 25th anniversary of the Forum. And the purpose of the panel was just to remind everyone that this whole organization is based on the marketplace of ideas. And we don't want to lose this freedom, so we have to protect it. And thank you all for supporting the Forum today.
My name is Monica Florian, and I was the first president of the Orange County Forum. And 25 years ago, when the Forum was starting, Orange County was really breaking out as an independent, powerful entity within the state. And a group of people had a vision. Many of those people are here today. They felt that there was a need for an independent and sophisticated forum that could focus local attention on important public policy issues. And they also felt that there was a need for a venue to bring together the emerging political, business, education, and community leadership in the county. The Orange County Forum is the result of that vision. And though the vision was big, our first year, the goals for our very first year, 25 years ago, were quite practical. And we felt that the Forum would be very successful if it could produce 4 diverse programs with an attendance of 75 to 100 people. And we felt that if we could do that, then we were right in thinking that the Forum had a place in Orange County. Well, at the end of our first year, we had produced 12 very successful programs, and we were all feeling very fine. But the best was yet to come, because in December, we learned that then Governor Pete Wilson had agreed to make a major policy address at the Orange County Forum. And in very short order, with just days to do it, the Orange County Forum turned out an audience that was big enough to fill a ballroom. And the next day, all of the media outlets were filled with stories talking about the Orange County Forum event. That was probably more because of the governor than the Forum, but we didn't care. But the result was that the credibility of the Orange County Forum as a go-to place in Orange County was cemented. And that is why one of the reasons why we want to honor and thank Governor Wilson today, not only for this very important event in the history of Orange County that set us off on the right foot in year one, but also for the support that he has shown the forum over the years. And we want to thank you, Governor, for all your efforts for the state, the nation, the community, and for us, the forum. And thank you very much for all your support of public discourse of important issues. So, Governor. You're welcome. I'll tell you what it is, okay, and then you can talk. Excuse me. Because we know that you don't need another plaque or a resolution or something else, and because we know that you're a real history buff and that you've worked very hard for the creation of a World War II monument and acknowledgement, this is a very unique book. It is a book of how books went to war, and it is the story of publication, an effort in the country to produce books to send to the fighting force overseas. And that effort is very creatively detailed here, but basically that whole effort created the paperback book industry, and it created a generation of readers. And in addition to the book, which is newly published, we have actual copies of the books, some books that were printed during the war for you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Monica, and thank you, members and supporters of the Orange County Forum. This is a meaningful gift to me, as Monica has told you. I spend a good bit of my time not in lovely Orange County, but in New Orleans, where the National World War II Museum is located. It is a work in progress, but we have built out on the master plan 7 of the 8 pavilions that cover 3 blocks just off the downtown business district. And I urge all of you who have any excuse to go anywhere near New Orleans to do so and build into your schedule a day, because it's worthy of your attention. And in particular, if you have teenagers near to you, take them, because it is not an exercise in nostalgia. It is a teaching institution. It is interesting, somewhat ironic, that the inspiration for the creation of not a monument but a museum was from the great historian Stephen Ambrose, no longer with us, but he lived to see the opening on June 6, 2000, of this museum, which Congress shortly thereafter declared to be the nation's official World War II museum. Why a museum? Because after interviewing so many people, doing so many oral histories, Steve felt that something more personal as well as more concrete was needed than simply a monument. And I think he was right, because what we wanted to do was to make clear that freedom is not free. Not only do you have to be well informed to make intelligent decisions that hold people in a democracy accountable for the decisions they're supposedly making for the public, but also you have to be aware of what's going on in the world. There are evil people, and if you ignore what they are doing to other people, then you will be held accountable yourself. Unhappily, World War II should never have occurred, because we had ample warning. And we were a divided nation. When finally Pearl Harbor ended that, it did not end the miscalculation of the Axis powers. We had to do that, and it cost 440,000 young American lives. So it is important to have the Orange County Forum so that the people who care have the information to make the right decisions and to hold people accountable. So many good things came from World War II. One of them was that paper book industry and that generation of readers. So this is a very meaningful gift to me, and one that makes great sense as coming from this organization that has done so much to inform the leaders of Orange County, because that's what this is all about. There are some people who just can't be bothered. They'll let the other folks make the decisions, then complain if they don't like the decisions. You have understood that to live in a free country, you cannot take the freedom for granted. It's been very costly to win and to keep. And the best way to keep it is to make certain that those that would miscalculate and try to take you on are sobered by the fact that you have a capability to give real meaning to diplomacy, to make it succeed. You can't do that with the world's 18th Army right behind Romania. Not if the people who are watching are Stalinists or Hitlerian or Islamo-fascists. So I thank you. I thank you for caring enough to make the effort. And it is an effort. And I'm looking at Nancy Dooley, who was probably up all night. And her eyes are not crossing, but she deserves, I think, not only our thanks, but our applause. As do all the rest of you who have, for 25 very quick years, made this the forum that the people who conceived of it had hoped it would become. And I am honored and grateful that you have done that. I'm even more honored and grateful for that than for the 5 invitations to come. But I must say that was a test of you, not of me. Thank you so much.
The Orange County Forum is brought to you through the generous support of the Orange County Register and our sustaining partners. For more information about the Orange County Forum, call 949-588-9884. The Orange County Forum is a nonprofit organization. Your contributions are tax deductible.